And after a bitter and expensive Republican runoff between Ken Paxton and John Cornyn, the focus now moves to what this result means for the future of Texas politics. Joining us now is LeTourneau University political science professor Dr. John Barrett to break down what drove voters in this race. And Dr. Barrett, are we seeing a permanent shift where Republican primaries in Texas are now more about loyalty to President Trump than traditional conservative credentials or seniority?
Well, certainly this was a victory for the MAGA right or the hard right, however you want to term it. And we're seeing this across the nation, that even though approval ratings for Trump are down and there's a lot of kind of issues out there, inflation and the war and whatnot, that the base of Republicans are still very loyal to Trump. And that's showing up in the primaries.
With Senator John Cornyn losing this race, what message does this send to other longtime Republicans in Washington who may not fully align with President Trump?
Nobody's really been able to carve out any measure of independence from Trump. We've seen this again in many other places where people will try to say, well, I'm with the president, 90% of the time or 95% of the time or 99% of the time. And what we're seeing here is that with the president, that's just not really enough. You've got to be with him 100% or nothing.
And we know that Ken Paxton is going to be facing off against Tallarico, and he has been having strong poll numbers than many Texas Democrats in recent years. Dr. Barrett, how serious of a threat could he be to Paxton?
Well, I think it is a serious threat. Paxton brings a lot of baggage. Democrats are hopeful that this might be one of the Hail Mary passes they can catch and, flip the Senate. And so I think we're going to see Democrats go all in here. I think we're going to see a lot of negative campaigning against Paxton, and we're in for a nasty race.
And how does James Tallarico change the dynamic of this race compared to running against a more traditional Democrat?
Well, I think Tallarico is certainly a very solid candidate. But really what's benefiting is just the overall, political dynamics here of, again, Trump's approval rating is going down and inflation. And so we're seeing the Democrats kind of getting a boost. Tallarico kind of has this choir boy image, and I think that's going to be a sharp contrast with Paxton, who doesn't have that kind of image. So I think that's kind of one of the things that Tallarico will bring to the table.
And I know we've been talking a lot about this U.S. Senate race as it's a big change for Senator John Cornyn not being in the U.S. Senate race or winning the Senate race. But Dr. Barrett, what other races were you following tonight?
Well, certainly the Attorney General race was very interesting and kind of a similar result there, right? Chip Roy was trying to carve out a measure of independence, and he's not going to make it either. I think that the difference between his performance and Cornyn's performance kind of tells you the value of the Trump endorsement, which is, say, pretty significant. And so in general, it's just not been a good night for the established guard Republicans.
Alrighty, Dr. John Barrett, thank you for your insight.
Thank you.